Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
When it comes to your, and by the way, this is for parents, when it comes to your child going to college, there's so much at stake, more than I think we even realize, aside from the financial aspect of it. You've got 12 years of schooling, you've got your child's life, then there's the emotional aspect that goes into all of that. You want to make sure that that's all covered, and she can help you out with that. She has different titles. I just call her, she's the college expert. She's also, I guess, an admissions counselor, so much more. She's Gail Reams, and she joins us here on the program. Hi, Gail. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Steve. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. Officially, what would we call you?
Well, my official title is Independent College Admissions Consultant.
Gotcha. And what exactly do I know what it means? And I wish I called upon you years ago, but what exactly does that mean?
Well, it's not too late, Steve. We can help out your son and other students of the parents that are listening today. What it means is that I actually can help your child with the college admissions process, helping him or her get into the dream school that he or she has always wished to be able to go to.
I will share with you that today, later today, it's open house for his college. So we're traveling upstate, and that's what's going on. Um,
Exciting time.
it is. It is. It's exciting, but also challenging because then you got a kid leaving, so it's a whole that well, the emotional aspect of it, and everything else involved. Now, I would think that if a college is selected, there's acceptance, the financial situation is worked out, that at that point you've done your work. There's no more, but you say you can jump in at this point.
Well, absolutely. What's absolutely essential is that you have a good college list. And what's that college list based on? Well, usually a student will excel in either the reading, writing aspects or the science, math, and will choose a degree along that line, a major, for instance, in engineering if they're into math or science, or maybe they're interested in pre-med. So that helps when we make up the college list for the student.
And how much do you get involved? Do you match up the student with counselors and tutors? Is that all part of it as well?
I uh, I actually have been doing this pretty independently for the last 11 years.
Wow. Well, even before we continue, tell me your background. How'd you get to this point with helping parents and students navigate this whole thing called college?
Well, I've always been involved in education as a teacher, high school and college English, graduated from Duke, got my master's from UNCG in English. And then I was approached by a good friend of mine, Pam Proctor, who wrote the book, The College Hook. She was also a past editor of Parade magazine. So she was my mentor. And she said, Gail, I've got too many students to handle.
Mm.
I'll take the juniors and senior, or I'll take the freshmen and sophomores. I'm going to hand you over the juniors and seniors. So that's how I got started 11 years ago. And I love what I'm doing. I love to be able to help young people.
Wow. Your passion shows, by the way, Gail. It really does. I have to imagine the what was called a guidance counselor in a high school, even a junior high. They have a different name for it. I don't know what it's called now, student something. Uh, they've got hundreds of students to work with. So I can't see that they can give that personalized attention that you can. What what do you do to help and support students when it comes to applying for colleges? Let's look at that.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think the ratio is 420 students to one counselor and 15 minutes max, usually 8 to 15 minutes time that a student will get during the whole 4 years of high school from that guidance counselor at the school. So it's imperative that parents get an independent counselor to help with the admissions process because it's so complicated and they get overwhelmed and there's so many variables involved. What I do is I have compiled 5 hours of video with combination PDF files covering all the aspects of the college admissions process, from picking out the curriculum to talking about testing for SAT, ACT, being sure that students, if they're able, take AP classes, that's advanced placement, or IB, International Baccalaureate, or dual enrollment classes. Everyone needs to fill out the Common App. And on there, they answer a series of questions. They can put up to 20 schools on the Common App that they are interested in going to, and they answer a series of questions that are general questions, and then they answer a series of questions for each individual school. Not only do they fill out a personal essay, which is 650 words, but also they have to write 250-word essays for most of the elite colleges as supplemental essays, usually 3 or 4 of those. So it's quite involved, and we need to get students working on this right away. I will say that I have never had a student who has not met every single deadline required.
Yeah, to your point, even this year has been more challenging as I'm understanding and seeing it. There's something went on with financial aid or the application for financial aid, and a lot of that was delayed with a lot of schools. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's a tricky business. We recommend everybody go on FAFSA, which is free application for federal student aid. Yeah, usually the date was October 1st. It got delayed till January this year. But that's essential to be able to do. And it's essential that parents know what's going on in the process. I keep great records and inform the parents every week of what's going on. I set up counseling sessions every single week with the student with a list of to-do tasks. So that's why we get everything accomplished. I mean,
Mm.
one week it might be, okay, writing your first draft of your personal essay. Next week it might be writing your resume. Then making up a list of schools that you wish to visit. If you can't make an in-person visit, then I highly recommend that you do virtual visits. You can find out a lot about schools by actually doing a virtual visit.
Thank you for sharing that because I do know some students that have done the virtual visit, and I think it's so important when you think about the travel that could be involved. The school may be 100,000 plus miles away. Why make that trip unless you've at least had that starting point? What is the starting point for you? What age would you say
I like to
somebody could
get
start?
kids freshman year. You know why? Several reasons. One is it's important that they set up curriculum for all 4 years that will be necessary. For instance, suppose a child said and announced to his parents, I want to go to Harvard, it's junior year. Um, and he was almost ready to become a senior. One of the requirements for Harvard is that you have 4 years of language, and say he'd only taken 2 years of language. Well, he wouldn't be eligible for Harvard. So if I get kids when they're freshmen, then
Wow.
we can map out their curriculum that's necessary for the schools that they're interested in. Why else is that important? Because you're familiar with the National Merit Scholarship, the preliminary, the PSAT, they're going to take a practice in the sophomore year, and then what really counts is the junior year. So if they do extremely well on the PSAT, then they'll be eligible for a National Merit Scholarship. And a lot of times will get 4 years of tuition paid to the college of their choice. So we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars here that they can get through these scholarships.
When you're working with a student, how often is the parent involved? Should they be involved every single time? Do they need to be involved every time there's communication between you and a student?
That's up to the parents. I had one mother that was on every single call, and it was fine. She added a lot and was helpful. I've got parents that know how to do an Excel file. By the way, I send an Excel file to every family, and that's for research on all the colleges that they're interested in because I have all the different categories down the left-hand side with all the colleges across the top that they're interested in. Because gathering data and research on these colleges is imperative. Well, some parents love to help with that, and that's fine for gathering the research. Most of the students are on these calls just by themselves, but if the parents want to be involved, that's fine.
Hmm. You bring up a great point in terms of the requirements on Harvard. And I got to believe in many different occupations and majors that there's a lot going on here that you might not be aware of. And, with that ratio of the people in the guidance office at school, they're not gonna be up to speed on that. They've got to move on to the next student and on to the next student. Uh, how do you prepare a student for an interview?
Interesting you asked that. I was on the Duke University interview committee as an alum. And so I had 20 years experience interviewing these students. So I love to do interview prep for the kids. I've got 3 pages of questions that are the most commonly asked questions on the interview. So what I do is I have a prep session via Zoom usually. Sometimes it's in person and I critique the student. I've got a background in speech and debate, was on the high school team, runner up in the state of Missouri. So I think this speech is extremely important. So consequently, we need to be sure these kids are prepped for their interviews.
How about some other insight, things that we might not realize why it's important to get somebody like an admissions counselor?
All right, what I want to emphasize to the parents is that the main thing you want to do is be sure that your child stands out as unique. Because think about it from the college admissions point of view. They want to get kids that are going to contribute something to the college now and also in the future as alums. So if these students have a special talent, that can stand out, then it's going to be extremely important to that college. So think about that. And I send questionnaires out to both the parents and the student to get background information. Another reason to start early, there was a student that kind of dabbled a little bit in photography freshman year and signed up for the school newspaper, took some pictures, submitted them, they got published. Then the local newspaper found out this kid has talent, started publishing in their paper. Then guess what happened next, Steve? It goes to the AP, and we're talking about national publication of these pictures. Well, by the time this kid was a senior, he was known all over the United States as a top photographer. You don't think that the colleges were drooling over him, wanting to
Mhm.
have him and
Wow.
accept him? So that's just one example.
Wow. How exciting. Um, I have to imagine too that you can guide somebody, a student along the way to like, for example, let's say you started in ninth grade and let's say that student had aptitude for photography, just very creative. You might have been able to, if it didn't go that way, might have been able to at least open up certain roads or direction where that student could get those photographs published or at least seen, whereby a parent might not know that, guidance counselor doesn't have time, nor does, let's say, the photography teacher at school. They're busy as well, right?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of parents ask me, can you help me with summer programs? Can you help me with internships? And I say, absolutely. And this is one thing I recommend to all parents that they check into this. How valuable it would be, say, for a student who is going into the senior year to spend that summer, if he wants to go into medicine, shadowing a doctor and
Mm.
being able to get that experience in college. Really, colleges really look highly upon this. Other thing I wanted to highlight is there's so many homeschool kids now, and how do you compare a kid that is homeschooled by a parent, say lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, with a student that goes to Needham Broughton, which is one of the top public schools in the United States? Well, what you do is
Mm.
you help that student with getting into some dual enrollment classes. Why? Because if that student has excelled at a community college or a nearby college taking dual enrollment, the chances that he will succeed in college are excellent.
Well, you mentioned internships, Gail. Is it by law or regulation that some compensation has to be offered, either monetary or class credit?
No, that's not essential, but it sure looks good on that resume,
Well,
doesn't it?
sure, yeah, especially if it's monetary. Looks good in a lot of ways. I had heard something a while back that if there's an intern, or maybe it's a maybe if it's a college level intern, that there needs to be some kind of exchange. It can't be.
Remuneration, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Um, I didn't even think of the aspect of you helping with internships. So, final question on that: would you make suggestions for them, or would you connect them? How would that work in terms of
Absolutely.
internships?
You know, the family and I are all involved in this together, and we do research what's available. I've got a student now that is pre-med and interested. I did a research for volunteer activities or possibilities in the community. So anything that can be done that is helpful for a student, we work on that together.
What about prep school?
So prep school is another thing that a lot of my students actually go to prep school, and this can be an advantage because sometimes they have additional help at the school. Colleges do look at where a student goes to school. And if they're not in the upper 10% at a prep school, because the upper 10% has all been accepted at Harvard and Yale and Duke and some of the other schools, they'll take that into consideration. But yes, the best education that a student can get is always favorable.
Wonderful. Uh, what a valuable service. As a parent, all right, maybe we've gone to college, but that was then. Things have changed.
Things have changed.
Yeah, and you keep your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. And for that, we appreciate that. Final thoughts here. Final thoughts. If somebody has a student in high school or let's say middle school, even starting the conversation with you, how does that begin?
Well, how that begins, I just have a brief chat on the phone with a parent usually, and then we set up a Zoom call with the parent and the student. In the meantime, I send the questionnaires that the student and the parent fill out to give me the background information, asking questions like, what's the GPA? What scores do you have so far? And I get an idea of some of the colleges that the student might want to go to or the major, and we go from there, building a list of colleges. One thing I did want to mention, I'm making an offer on this podcast today. Any parent who has listened to the podcast, if they go to my website, which is www.reams college consulting, that's REAMS collegeconsulting.com, fill out the little form there with the name, address, name, telephone number, email. Then I'm going to send you a video document with accompanying PDF file that will help you make your college list. I mentioned this is the first thing that most students do when they start the process. So this will help you get started and be invaluable for you.
Wow. Uh, I can't imagine having gone through it already. Up to this point, where we're at the point of open house for college. Technically, what is open house? Just to get that out there. I mentioned it before. How do you define open house for everybody?
All right. Now, has this student been accepted at this college?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So that's a different variable because sometimes there are open houses, which are basically fairs that a lot of colleges go to and they present at the school. Open house is great because the college has already accepted the kid. So all you have to do is accompany your child and make a list of things that you want to inquire about. Be sure and get the name of the rep. Every school has a regional rep. For instance, I'm in Florida, Vero Beach, Florida. For so this area of Florida, South Florida, there's a rep for, say, the University of Florida. So you get the name and the telephone number, the email of that rep, and you can follow up with any questions.
Thank you for today. Wow. You got your finger on the pulse of this. You really do. Yeah, it's almost like there's no stone unturned when Gail's at the helm of the college ship here. Final question. What's your connection with the guidance department at the school? So you're working independently with and for the student and the parent. We have the school over here. Are you a liaison? Do you get involved if need be?
Good question. A lot of counselors realize that they can't cover all of this. It's too much, and they make referrals to me, which I
Sure.
love to get from the
Sure.
school. And so if a school guidance counselor tries to do this on their own, it's extremely difficult. But I do have contact with some of the local schools here. I've given them my card, so they know who I am. And of course, they're still going to be involved with two things that are imperative for the school counselor. One is to be able to help that child make up the curriculum for each of the 4 years of high school. And the other one is to write counselor recommendations, which are then submitted to the Common App.
Wonderful. Gail, great talking with you. How do we find you?
So go on reamscollegeconsulting.com and fill out a form, and I will get back in touch with you. If you can't wait, you can give me a call, 772-538-6137.
I like your get it done attitude.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're not messing around.
No, I'm ready to go. I'm
You
ready to
are.
help these kids. They're out there and they need help, Steve.
And they need help, and so do the parents. Thank you so much for being here today, Gail. Truly, truly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.